action. All right, so welcome into your restorative experience. And I want you to set up the props so that you have a bolster across the mat. This is an option one. Option two would be the bolster would be stacked up on a couple folded blankets. But if you have it across, you might find a nice kind of lateral expansion of the rib zone, the mid zone. So I want you to be able to kind of spread out the breathing muscles in the beginning. So the blankets at the back are stacked up. I know some people might modify this a little different. Maybe you'll have a block in front of the bolster, but just kind of get going with the movement in hips and ribs to begin. Okay, so I have all that behind me, my bolster across, my blanket stacked up. There's space between my bolster and my blankets. And then as I sit in front of the bolster, for me, I'm not going to use a block here today under the tailbone. I'm just going to sit right next to it, but what's important is I have blocks under my knees. So I'm going to slide the feet together so the soles of the feet are close to touching. And I've got a couple blocks and I'm going to add one under each thigh, or you can add it closer to the knee. Okay, and you'll find out if you want to guide your hip to that much stretch in a few moments. Okay, connect your belt so you have a big loop. And as you take that loop overhead, let it drop to the back of your pelvis, and then scoop up those feet with the belt. So the belt goes over the arches. I usually just give the instruction that it goes as high up on the foot. So if you're tugging your foot, you do want to find this kind of tug here and tug here. Okay, so it's tug one, tug two. All right. And as you tighten up the belt, okay, I recognize not all of us are going to use the belt for this one. Some of us will go minus the belt, and I even set it up with the belt in the wrong direction. So I like to have it so the tail of the belt, I can pull on it easily. It's drawing towards me. I try not to twist the belt to the back of the pelvis, and it's at the base here. So it's about the eyebrows of the buttocks. All right, so move the belt back, move the blocks beneath the legs. Now, as you lower back, you got a sandbag nearby, maybe. And I would recommend you can either put sand here across the ribs in the beginning, or you can wait until your head is back on your blankets. Okay, and don't be surprised if it feels a little bit peculiar in all the ways that you organize the shape to kind of start to shift the circulation. And not only is it important to work on that upper respiratory expanse, but also the hip work. So if we can start to warm up the hip area and this basin in the legs, like the groins, stimulating that flow of lymph, right? We can do so a world of good. So if you're feeling like this is too much, if you're congested or anything, what you might do is have a little more height under your head, okay? That would help. You could fold the blanket up one more, and that could be easier. And there are some of us that want less blanket right now, and we want to open up even more, and we're breathing fine right through the nose, so that could be you. All right. Now, sand is across, or sand is heart to belly. And if this is too much with the bolster across the back, you can again come up carefully and lengthen so you have the bolster along the full spine like a ramp for your spine. All right. Now with the arms opening, feel the reasonable amount of movement that connects from the threads of deep breath, right? That's a lift in the body. That's like life force I'm engaging in. And then on the out breath, let the arms continue to flow to release. Now there's little tendrils, right, of fibers that take time to release. So however you set up your props, some of us will be set up like this, some are going to move it around. But once we design our bones, our muscles, kind of our soul into this expanse of openness, we can let the eyes rest back with either an eye pillow or just closing your eyes and simply begin to receive the practice. So it's not so much a commitment, right? A commitment's when you do practice is different than an intention, right? A commitment, you know exactly what you're going to do, and you're going to follow through with all of the things you committed. But intention is there's kind of an opportunity to explore something you're not sure you're going towards. So just noticing if there's areas in the body that you want to focus into. Awareness could be it. And if the back is tender on this one, I'd recommend that you can do a couple things. You can loosen up the belt a little bit. If that's already happening, you can move the blocks higher up on the side of the thighs. Right? So I could just reach down, move my blocks a little bit higher up on the side of my thighs. And that gives me a little bit more ease in my back. You can also let the knees point up and not even use the shape with the blocks or the belt. But let the body really spread out and open up its shape, receiving the breath and relaxing on your out breath. Just feeling the shoulders flow back. And you can change the sand to move it either lengthwise or across the ribs in these moments. Just starting to regenerate through the breathing muscles. And really using the props to support the process of letting go. So you want something under you to lift up into the ribs, and a few more moments with all the props. Okay, opening up the arms, letting the shoulders guide back, feeling the arch of the breath. So feeling is also filling, right? In this one. So feeling, but filling the body with that oxygenation, just that process of breathing in and letting go. And now finally just scan from the feet to where you might have this interesting connector of the belt. It is kind of interesting how we move our belts around the feet and the hips to wake them up. It does bring energy there, it brings focus. So just noticing that when we come onto our back in a moment without any major props, you want to kind of still have that sketch and that outline in your spatial outline energy is still connecting. Okay, arms can reach back overhead maybe. Okay, I like them open out to the side personally. So if I stretch them back, I've got to really hit up the rib lift, the lower rib lift, the belly lift to keep my back comfortable. And then just let the arms open back out. Okay, if you have sand, I want you to move that aside. Be sand free for a little while. And if you can reach for the buckle, you're going to unbuckle. And then as you slide that away from your thighs, just bring the knees to point up. Walk your feet in carefully so they're wide enough of a stance. You don't want them to be tucked in too close together. They almost are kind of like turning out, kind of like duck. You're moving your feet out so it's easier on the lower back. And then moving a block on the side you're going to roll to, just move it aside so you can easily roll to the side, any side, and come on up halfway. And then move your bolster off to the side yard. Move one of your blankets away if you've got two. And I want you to end up here in this next part of the set. So your head is on a low folded blanket. And this is key, it's low. You don't want this to be too high or bulky unless you're congested, right? That would be. Then you definitely can have as many blankets as you want so you can breathe. Now, I want you to take your ball. And first thing, we're just going to place it at the sacrum. So I've got the softball, it's at the base of my spine space. I like it about there. I mean, with the sacrum shearing, I would prefer the ball just kind of between sacrum and tailbone. I mean, how can you differentiate when you have a ball this big? It's kind of close to both. So just move your hips side to side, wag your tail, You can let your arms be down by the sides. They can be outwards. If you've got stuff in your way, we'll be moving it around. But get some ease into your back, just side to side motion, hip moves, feet push down. Make sure the feet are touching the ground here to get the movement across the back of the pelvis versus taking the legs up in the air. We always get to legs up later. Okay, now walking the feet in a little closer so they still turn out a bit. And you'll just lift the hips up through that bridge process and guide the ball to the upper outer left thigh. Lower the pelvis down so the tailbone touches the ground and it's not lifting up, right? So the ball is simply stuck in, kind of wedged into the upper outer left thigh to the hip. Right ankle crosses to the left knee, and you're going to just come into leaning figure four. So I have that right ankle, left knee, figure four. My knees tilt to the left, and I hold on to the right knee with the left hand. Okay. And you may be used to this, a way different variation that I teach usually. We usually have something under our back, but right now all we have is a little blanket under our head. So the right arm can stretch straight back behind you besides your head. Like I would extend the right arm straight back, let the hand relax, and just feel that circulation into the right hip. Okay, and you can do a little bit of rebound work, right? You could do a little bit of rocking up and down on that ball. You might even kind of make friends with it, like you could move it a little further in, smush it in, you can move it further down the side of the thigh, and just see how that creates, just that little motion creates movement in the side of the waist, stretching up into the ribs. Okay, keep the right leg crossed over the left. Now this means I've got my ankle closer to the knee right now. So now I'm just gonna slide my leg over that left leg, then bring the knees into center, take the ball over to the right upper outer hip, and just let the knees tilt to the right. So it's an IT band stretch. Now, some of us might need more props under our right thigh. Some of us might go without anything under the right thigh, just without a ball, without a block, and get a little deeper stretch into this exterior hip thigh band. So this might feel really good too. If your knees are a little worried about it, and you're like, oh, my knees are getting upset, you might decide to take that crossing with the right ankle, not so far down the side of the leg. Maybe you keep it connected here with the foot to the outer side of the left knee, and just let the knee shift to the right and use a block or ball under the thigh. That might be a little easier on the knee, right? This is a lot of pressure, and it does get the job done, right? With the stretch in the low back waistline area. Breathe, arm is open, or arm is down. Okay, you decide where your upper armor is gonna go, right? Because this chest area can always use that openness. Okay, breathing and feeling the sensations. You know, just check in with a little bit of roll into the glutes here. So bring the knees back center, uncross that right leg, and then as you reach down into your feet to push down, scoop the tailbone under, bring the ball over to the right rear, so beneath, right? All rears are at the back anyway, but roll it under, and then move your hips side to side, massaging into the glute. Okay, so we're doing this a little earlier on in the session, so we can stay kind of tuned in to the sensations here of the areas that we layer into the poses. So if you're rolling, you really do want that ball, so it's at the rear, right? It's not going to be at my hip side. It's going to be kind of right in the center, glute maximus, and it rolls a little bit while you're moving on the ball, right? So if you push down, yeah, don't be afraid to use the body pressure weight into the ball and glide across the glutes. Okay. If there's an especially good spot you want to kind of stay on, a good little knot there, you might just stay. The knees don't have to point up the whole time. The knee that's closest to the ball might swerve out to the side. Who knows, it might kick out. It might push down on the floor straight. Take a few breaths here. So feel that side guidance into the pressure on the glute. I always find it interesting just to connect to these muscles via the massage with the ball. I mean, my normal living experience is not quite this sensation on this area. So it's nice to rub into it and hydrate the tissues. It's just good stuff. Okay, now center, right foot closer towards the sole of the foot on the floor, and then balance back to the tailbone, and then get a hold of that ball on the right side and just place it to the upper outer right thigh so it's not under you anymore. Left ankle to the right knee, just hook it over to that knee, and then let the knees lean to the right. Okay, so right hand holds onto the left knee, left arm stretches straight back. Okay, so if it's a little, you're uncertain about it, you might find that the blanket under your head doesn't always feel like enough for this. We're used to using a bolster under the whole spine for this. So if you're feeling a little bit lost, okay, it's the same pose. We just took away some props, and it'll let you get a little deeper into the hip. So if you're leaning to that right, if you have anything over there to stop your movement, like a block, like I've got, I'm just going to move a little off to the side. You might like the block under your left foot. And if your left leg crosses over a little further to the right side, just feel how those side leg muscles, just keep it kind of pure and simple. It's the side of my leg, the muscles there are feeling a little grip, lifting up into my hip. I got grip in my hip, okay? So with the grip hip, you're going to take some time here to just kind of marinate those tissues a bit. Breathing. Maybe your head is centered, maybe you turned it to the right. Feeling the ribs move. All for the hip here. Hooray for the hip. Okay, now with that leg crossing over, we're just going to guide the knees back to figure four, center right foot, sole the foot down, and then move the ball over to the upper outer left hip. Now, you might decide as you cross the left leg over the right that you don't want a ball over here. Okay, I like the support of the ball. I can kind of guide it down to the side, circulation of my leg. I can have it higher up, and you can always go minus. You can even use a block instead. But as the leg band stretches, that side fibers, the arms could go goalpost. You can stretch the right arm straight back again. That might feel like a nice spacious opportunity for your rib cage, your abdominals to stretch, your side abdominals. But with that crossover, span into the hip. If you need to do a little bit of rebound work, like a little lift and lower on the ball, if you need to slide the left foot to the knee, okay, instead of across the leg, that might be easier because you still have that connection of the left foot to the right upper outer leg. And it's close to the IT band, right, with your foot to the side of the knee. So I don't want you to hit the IT band with your foot, but you can feel how it's a guiding force. Okay. But use the ball maybe under that left leg or right besides the hip. A few more moments. Okay. All right, now as we take the roll, right, we're just simply going to keep the ball over there, left side. I'm just going to uncross and then push the ball under my left rear and then massage the glute. Okay, so feeling the hips move. That's all you got to do. Your arms could be by your sides. They could be back behind you. I would put the arms in a place that's not going to make you work with the chest that much. You can bring all your energy into the hip this way, into the glute. So put all the force down into the pelvis, into where the ball is, massaging into that left rear. So you want to kind of free the glute here. Get glute free. Crossing through the fibers, gliding across the skin and the muscle. You can feel that broad effect on the surface muscle with the ball. And when the hip guides side to side, you might get a feeling of twisting, but I do want you to notice your body does take some turns for the better here with the twist pulse. And then embody just that centered plan here of feet push down, put the ball at the sacrum again, all right? Hands down beside your hips, move a little side to side, just tiny movements. Arching is clearly kind of happening here with the ball at the sacrum. So there's a little bit of nice arch. And the hands push besides the hips on the floor, push down. And I want you to carefully craft starting to move the right leg to stretch straight up, flexing, and then the left leg up. So you're in a reverse action. If it's a little shaky, it's not that surprising on this one. Unless you practice this semi-regularly, it does get a lot easier for the lower abdominal strength. And if it's just so much, you can go one leg at a time. If you just can't breathe into it, it's a lot for some of us, so you can do what you can here. But feel that careful arch of the lower back here. So I have to find right to the edge of that curve, right? That contour at the base of the spine. And then as you lower down, bend the knees to lower your feet down. You're going to press down through the balls of the feet and then lift the hips up into a bridge pose. Okay, now interlace your fingers. Funny thing is you have a ball there. You might find, oh, should I hold the ball? I have never done that before. You could try to work your way towards just feeling where it is, but you don't have to hold on to it. But interlace your fingers below so they're underneath you. You try to make that interlace at the roots of the fingers. I like the span of the palms, the thumbs kind of drawing a little bit out. Yes, you can make a clasp, but you've got this ball in the way. Okay, but you can. I think that's pretty interesting to try to clasp the hands. If it's so much on the wrist, don't worry about clasping and making that 10-fingered fist. Just have the hands interlacing at the roots. Strengthen into your glutes now. Okay, shoulders trying to stretch back. If this is too much on the neck, you could always lower down a little bit, take the blanket, move it away, and then try it again. And feeling the back of the skull, that's pretty nice to do too. Okay. All right, now we're going to lift and lower. So I want you to lower down on the ball one more time at the sacrum level. Just ease, so rock the hips side to side, massaging into the sacrum, base of the spine. All right, now move the ball to the side. Lift up the hips, arms overhead. You have a blanket or you don't. It's up to you. And then lower down through the spine all the way to the tail. Okay, bring the knees to your chest on their own, independently without arm force. See if you can go with that. Okay, feeling how you want to kind of preserve your ability to move in these areas. I mean, they change with time in the body. It gets a little stiff in these areas. So when we lower the feet down, you're going to bring your arms overhead to stretch the hips up to bridge pose. And as your arms go up, just guide the spine down. Bring the hands down beside the hips and knees to your chest. Let's do one more drawbridge. Feet down, arms go up. Maybe you have the coordination to get that at the same moment, but no big deal. And then as you guide the spine down, okay, feeling how you emit that pressure through the tailbone. And then one final knees to chest. Hug them in. Hold the backs of the thighs so it's easier on the knees, and just rock a little side to side. Knees can be as far out as you like, right? You don't have to have them trying to push back to touch shoulders or anything. Maybe it's best, instead of having the idea of the form of the pose being a certain way, that you go with just feeling across the back of the pelvis from shoulder to shoulder, back, upper back area in the shoulders. All right. Okay, you can have a little leg tantrum before we come up. Want to shake them out. And let's kind of go back to those respiratory expansion. So we're going to roll either direction. And then when you come on up, let's go ahead and get our bolster again. I missed the bolster, but it's good to break up the sequencing a little bit, I think. Let's see how how it feels in our finale. So I think that's good to get a little more rolling in between. Let's try taking our blanket stack. So we've got a couple, we're going to set up for side sage. And I want you to have a block on the other side of the blanket, one or two. I'm going to go with two. I'm going to have one at the low setting and then one a little bit turned up to the higher. I'm going to move it a little to the right. So when I reach overhead, it's easier on my shoulder. And then I'm going to get a sandbag. And I like to use a ball. So have your bolster to support this side span, right? So I'm going to try to keep this openness in my rib cage. If you're having any respiratory challenges, what you might also do is have a round bolster. You might use the round one. Anyone can use that if you have one. Not that everyone showed up to class with a round bolster. You didn't find one on your doorstep this morning from the Zoom group? Okay, maybe not. If you have a round bolster, you might use it on this. You might add a blanket. I'm pretty cozy here. So, but some of you might need that. So you have a sandbag. Just put it up on the left side so it's easier to move it up to your side. These are the tactics you use when you're not in an in-person class. You can put the sand up on your bolster. Who cares what it looks like? It's just easier to get across. So ball on the inner right knee for some. You're going to start to lean down to that left side. And got my blanket stack. I got my sand to my outer right hip. I'm going to layer it on across so it doesn't fall. And as my right arm stretches over, I'm just going to kind of guide my shoulder. That left shoulder is really interesting here, how I can stretch the left arm between the bolster and the blanket. So it's in that notch between. It's not on either of them. The left armpit is a little bit up, right? It is on my bolster. But as I guide my right arm overhead, give yourself some wandering time here. You don't have to make it happen perfectly right away. You might find, especially when you're in your own little solo world at home, you might decide I don't want to follow it. Just like that, I have a different version of it. And you might add more props. Okay, I can't think of any more props you might add into this except maybe a chair under your hand because that's higher and easier on the shoulder. And the breathing muscles. Okay, so kind of feel you've got a left and right side to your breathing muscles, right? Okay, and what's getting more kind of boost is that right side has the reach, right lung, and left side has pressure and stimulation just from the weight. So your focus is just to breathe. And if that right arm goes behind you or you just bring it down besides your hip, that's fine. You can take little breaks with it if you want. A little bit resting the brain. Notice the sound of your breath. And the weight of your head on the blankets. If you need more height, you can always just fold the blanket up one more. Right? If you feel like, oh, my neck isn't quite letting go. I notice the neck on this one more when I do the online because I think I look at a screen a little more, right? Okay. So I can feel where the neck holds a bit. So that's something I have to keep reminding myself is just let my head go. So looking might make it a little tenser in the neck. It could. Maybe when we look out with our vision, it tightens up the neck a bit. So let your head release. A few more breaths here. Okay, now let's take a sleeping sage today. And don't worry about your sand, right? Don't make a big event trying to get it on your back. So you can feel how this is kind of preserving your ability to get that side reach, but now we're going to work with that rotation. So we've got this side extending, expanding, and I just move my sand off my hip and I turn. I try to make the rotation comfortable with my rib cage. I don't prefer a ball under my knee on this one. I don't think I ever have found that comfortable, but some of you might have the ball between the knees with the fetal position. This might be possible. But if you're comfortable with your left foot holding on to the inner right knee, you might stay with that. You can just turn your bolster up and then just rest on it. It's that easy. If you want a blanket on top of the bolster, you can change it around. I find talking to people about this, they say, I think the 2 blankets is too many. So some might go down to 1 blanket and go, oh, just that change, moving my hands aside, that feels like more of a twist. And prone twists are especially soothing because twists are good, right? They're regenerating, right? For spine, for organs, but they're also, when they're this direction, you really don't have to tighten at any of the upper spine zones, right? The upper back doesn't have to grip, the neck doesn't have to grip. You can actually let it go. So you could be here with 1 blanket under your bolster. You could add a blanket on top of the bolster. Okay. If you're still searching for another idea for this to make it better for you, you could put a block under your bolster. I know that looks like it's awfully high, but if you're challenged breathing wise, this would be better, right? If I'm congested, this would be much better. Okay. So, you never know what you're needing in your practice. Each time it's a little different. Another day, a new day. So arms are open, stimulating the weight into my left hip, strengthening into that right hip with the turning in of the knee, and relaxing at the tailbone. Just feel its wonderful arch right at the lower back. Take a few more moments. This is especially soothing for you. You might stay in it a little longer. Okay, now as the hands slide back, okay, if you need to stay in it longer, do so. Okay, but otherwise, just starting to come up. And between the 2 sides, between the 2 sage series on left and right, we're going to take an in-between moment to find a little symmetry. So turning the bolster now, come to knees, and hands are going to be a little different here than you might expect. I want you to have your bolster across the mat. You're going to take a block under each hand. Now I'm going to show a version with the elbows on the block and the hands, but I have to have my block. I've actually never tried it with it that way. Blocks are the lowest setting. That's what I've been taught. So hands on blocks, curl through the back, chin to chest, and arch the spine. Okay, now there's a couple ways we can go with this. We can have our elbows down, our forearms on the blocks, chin to chest, arch the spine. Okay, and you might find, even if you can put the palms on the blocks, it has a different energy through the rib cage. Yeah, so it feels a little bit more, I don't know, rich, right? When I have my elbows down, palms together. I like this version. I think they're both great. So take a few moments before we come into an up dog So this means we're kind of waking up the energy here in the core, and the hips are kind of pulling in and up, right? The hip flexors are are drawing in and doing the work they do all day long, which is contract. Okay. They have a life contract with you to be contracting. All right, now next time you come back to cow pose, the arch, bring the hands on the blocks or the floor. Not everyone's going to be really feel like it's that popular to put your hands on the blocks. I recognize this. But when you lean forward, you have your hips on the bolster, the front hips, the thigh lids, and stretch the waist forward and up. Okay, the blocks might be a real game changer for your back on this one. You might go, oh, not so grippy in the back. You can always go minus the blocks. Why not? Just try it. If you feel like you're willing to exert that, you might go, I get more stretch in my stomach here, right? I get more evenness here with my hands on the block. So I have to push and stretch my waist. Okay, now come back to a child's pose of choice. This might mean, it could be this. You might put your bolster on top of your blocks and have your elbows wide and your forehead on the bolster, knees out. This could be your version because your knees will accept this one. Some of you will come all the way back and put your seat on your feet in child's pose like so, head down to the hands. So it's either a deeper fold like child's pose, pressing down into the hands, the ankles, or it's going to be here. Okay. They're both good. I want you just to let this back space have some symmetrical openness here, both sides. And just feeling that breath. The knees are apart. So my knees are a little bit outwards, not together. Okay, now as you come back up, you're going to take the bolster center of the mat and start to turn to side sage on the right hip down. Okay, take some care. Get that sandbag probably up on your bolster. Okay, so you have a little bit of ease to transition your blocks at the other side. And your blanket stack is closer in underneath where your head's going to go. And you know, if you found that your neck was a little tight on the left side, you might take a fold with your blanket like a little higher, because your head's going to push it down regardless, right? So ball for some of us under the left inner leg. And then as I come in, I try to get my sand on in the beginning. Otherwise, I have to get back up. Okay. Even that little bit of pull in my neck to get back up is more than I want. So as I stretch, you might take a little bit of shoulder, kind of rolling, a little bit of movement, shrugging the shoulder up and down. And just feel what a shoulder's life is like when you're in a side stretch, right? So this might be really interesting for you to just feel as the arm reaches to the block. Okay, finding where that layer of just commitment to letting go with the right side. Just let that right side be heavy. That includes your head, right? I'll let my head relax into the blankets. I really appreciate here all the areas that we work through, right? We're getting our sides to get that full expansiveness. We got to work through all the areas of the body to provide it with that nourishment of improving circulation. Just taking your time. Yes, it's not taking time, it's making time. Making time for the practice. I think Eric told me that after practice once. He said that it's not taking time, it's making time. Okay, some of you remember Eric. Okay, now if you're slip sliding away, like kind of rolling on the back, I feel a little of that. part of it's the sand, if you're using that. It's gonna pull and give some traction here. So one thing I try to emphasize on this is not to try to suck the belly in at all. Go opposite with breathing experience, like expand, relax, expand. Not trying to tighten things up, but get more circulation and stretching the breathing muscles that way. So there's tone into the diaphragm, toning in the intercostals. You know, with this great reach, we can do things, right? We can have this stretch between the ribs, and then I want you just to start to move yourself into that sleeping sage pose. Yeah, and the leg pattern is close to like a pigeon. If you think of how we're positioning our leg, muscular, just how the musculature in the hip is moving. So you're not far from that. So as you turn, okay, you can just turn and then move your bolster up on top. If you're not so sure if you're going to use the props just like this, you might just move your ball, that's for sure here. Move the left thigh to the right foot and then rotate. Okay, first find your ability to preserve this motion in both sides of the torso. And as I lower down, my ribs on the bolster. Okay, once I make contact with a little below the sternum, right, the thicker rib space, if that feels comfortable right there, I can turn my head left and then go into the shape, sleeping sage. But if you decide, no, I can go further into the stretch. Remember, if I lower down, I'm going to get more of a twist, right? So that might work really nicely for your body. Okay. But it just depends on all things. It's the neck, it's not just the ribs, it's all the way up. Okay. So find what's comfortable. You don't have to turn your head to the right, just to the left, unless you're feeling owlish. Okay. Resting the brain. Now with the elbows pressing down, you're going to slide the hands in under the shoulders. If you need to stay in this one longer, go into it for a little more time. But as you come on up, you want to feel how you bring the left thigh to the right and then turn back to that table pose. And let's take our bolster. So it's going to be far away on top of your blanket. I'm going to recommend use a blanket under your knees unless you are in such a padded space you need no blanket, which is fine. But you're close to the wall maybe. Okay. So if you have a wall space nearby, you probably want to have your mat close to it, or if not next to the wall, the short end of the mat is at the wall. And then when you're here, you'll stretch your hands on top of the bolster. I like this much height underneath, so I have my bolster higher than if it was just without the blanket. But as I lower my head down, I'm going to move my ribs a little side to side. Remember when we had the ball under the sacrum, we were going a little side to side with the hips. Now I want you to try to work with the hips the same way, but there's no ball because that would be sort of silly because we can't roll into it. But move your hips side to side. Feet could be close together. Knees could be apart. Okay. All right. Now you bring the hands on down, maybe push the bolster a little further out away from you in front, and then come into alternating up dog, reaching the chest. Lots of room here for the hips to move down. Okay. Take a few moments with that lift, the ultra motion of the chest up. Okay. Now when you come back, you're going to feel that reach of the hips back, and the hands walk a little further out in front of you, and your head down, maybe touching the forehead to the floor. Okay, now feeling where your hands are kind of committed, right? Where their reach is. And when you come back up through to up dog, see if your arm bones can take that load of resistance. So lifting the chest up dog, back into kind of a this would be a semi child's pose, wouldn't it? A semi child's pose. Okay. And then moving, last few moments, move your neck muscles forward and then feeling just how the chest has that ultra lift. Okay, so this mid body is reaching and move through cat pose to semi child's pose back. Take your time. And if you decide this is where I want to be, just back here, you can stay. Okay. Some of us will find, I think, the intricacies of moving forward in the shoulders, kind of jostling in the rotator cuff when I come forward. I try to find the independence of my spine and my neck from my shoulders as I come forward and just lift up my chest. Doesn't mean it's easy, but I do the best I can to get that lift, that importance, and then come back through table. Okay. Get a couple blocks. If they're far, far away, take a few moments to crawl to get them. And you're going to have them on the sides of your mat. But first things first, hands into shoulders, toes under, come back to either a downward dog, or if this is a little too strenuous in your wrists right now, that's fine. You can have your feet wider and maybe walk your hands a little bit farther back towards your feet if that's better for you than a downward dog pressuring your wrist. Okay. So I have my feet out, so there's that wide reach. My head is between the arms. If I'm in a classic dog pose, though, I would have my feet right at the wall, so the heels would be up. My hands push the floor away. They're about shoulder distance, maybe a little bit further out. And I let my head just relax between the arms. Okay. Feel where the reaction is here in the legs. So if I bend the knees, I feel my chest move back towards the thighs. Or if I have my wide stance and I don't have my weight on my hands as much, I have more weight on my feet and my head between the arms. Take a few breaths here, just reversing that flow to the heart, the brain. If you're a little congested, you might have to come back to a wide stance like this and have your hands just above the knees and breathe. Don't push it with your head down though. Okay. Let the circulation flow. Find what's stabilizing for the joints. Okay, now we're going to come back on forward. If you're already in down dog, you're not far away from the knees going down. You're going to walk on forward into the hands, but lower down into the knee parts. And since this whole from my pelvis to my feet is all responsible for walking, right? This is the pelvis owns the legs. So we'll take a couple blocks. Have your hands on the block so they're the second setting. And left foot steps back to touch to the wall. Right foot steps forward. And it's kind of between the blocks. My foot's a little bit further forward than the blocks, but I want you to kind of gauge it so that the left thigh, the front of the back leg, is stretching. Your quad is stretching. And if it's a lot, if it's just a titch too much, just take the blocks a little higher. Okay. If it's too much on your wrists with the blocks, you can put your elbows, you can just cross the elbows on the thigh, the front thigh. I think the back thigh would be difficult to put your elbows on. Just feeling how you stretch into that front of the back thigh, that lunge. Yeah, I think I like elbows on thigh. Okay, and as you feel that range of motion, working your way towards stretching the left side of the abdomen, the abdominals. Okay, those of us with hands on blocks, some of you may, want you to find your way towards the back knee supported, the arch through the spine, and go one at a time. We're just going to bring the hands up to the thighs. We're going to just try to find just that reasonable amount of curve in the back. You don't have to use the wall to push into with your left foot, but it might be interesting to help your alignment, even if you feel like you're going to kind of fall over. Okay. Now we come up with our back knee lifting, and I want you to push into the wall with that left foot. Now make sure the wall's not, you're not going to poke through the wall here with your foot. Okay. So guide through that right knee, and I want you to push off the back foot, left foot forward to the right. So both feet about hips distance. Yeah, just measure them out. And then take that forward fold. So hands can hold the elbows. Some of you might put the blocks so they're close in and bring your elbows onto the blocks. I know this might seem like, well, why would I do that? But you want something that helps you feel supported. So in restorative, support is everything. If you decide you don't like that kind of barrier to going further into the stretch, then don't use a block, okay? Some of us will be more comfortable minus anything under. Maybe our forehead is close to the bolster, but not going to move us out of the stretch. Arms can swing. You can do a little swinging motion. Just kind of feel into what could loosen up stiffness in the body. Okay, it might very well be that you hold the legs and breathe. It only helps to breathe. Okay. All right, we're going to take a really wide forward fold, right? So a lot of inversion going into this next one. So we're going to switch the lunge, but first things first, we're going to take a wide stance. So I would take your blocks, you kind of loosely hold on to it. It's not like you're pushing your wrist into this one. So I find stepping my feet as close together as they can go. Right foot steps back, and I'm going to pivot to the right. So I'm going to turn my left foot in, take a wide stance. So it seems like a wide downward dog. And I'm going to walk the feet out. So maybe my right foot touches the wall. That can be kind of nice, but also it feels a little weird because one foot's pushing a wall and one's not. So you might have your foot a little distant from the wall. Turn the feet in, both, go in. Feel how that moves your hip, right? So you can always get a hold of the upper back part of your thigh and it's turning in. I'm not assuming everyone's going to hold their thigh and pivot it in, but the skin turns in. And then as you move your hips back, you can have your blocks underneath your hands lightly, and then your head down between. And your arms can also reach back. Some of us like to do this shape where just move it around so you can kind of see where the hands slide back, the palms are down. As I slide all the way up, your hands can hold your ankles, but remember, feet turn in, or your hands could be on the blocks and forward. Okay. The gist of it is head below heart, right? So if you find, oh, I'm just going to let my arms kind of dangle, I'm going to hold my ankles. I prefer ankles on this one. Crown of the head towards the ground, and maybe let your head nod a little bit. But feel that mounting circulation in the legs, across the back line of the corners of the hips. This is a really interesting one as you're in it for a few moments, just to feel where the circulation shifts in the bones. And just breathe. Okay, if you want to make a little bit of shoulder kind of crunchies, right, you can move the shoulders around. You might have some movement in them. It feels good. It sounds interesting. Some of us have that going on our shoulders, maybe. Just flow them the other way. They spent all their time down the back, and now they're in the opposite action in the back. Okay, now that you have all the skin cells of the face warmed up here, you're going to move your hands back to your blocks. Whew. Walk your hands and blocks to the left foot. Turn to the left foot. Right foot back. If you're a little bit discombobulated, take a few moments here just to find a left foot, a right foot back to the wall. And then we're going to start to slowly move back into our lunge process here. So my blanket, I'm going to shift it back. Maybe I don't need it that far back. But as I lower down my right knee, take that reach of the back right thigh so the quad stretches, lifting up through my chest. Breathing. Yeah, really feel for how your muscles are stretching, not straining. So finding, it's kind of a fine line, I think. So if my hands are on my blocks, and I prefer that I'll bring my blocks up high. If my elbows are on my thigh, I might lean in to find a little more of that support through the hip, right? To get a feel of that length through the front of the back thigh, hands on blocks or hands on, or crossing the elbows on the thigh, or maybe you start to proceed to come a little bit higher. Just be cautious here of the knee on both knees, right? The right knee might have a little bit of pressure on the side, the front side of the knee. So feel the foot push a little into the wall, and don't push down on your left patella, right? See if you can have your hands just a little bit above that knee, stretching through that quad. It's quad 2, quad 1, quad 2. 2 quads at the same time doing something. All right, take a few moments. Okay, good news. So we're gonna lean down. All right, so let's get a little feel here for possibly a pigeon pose. Now I know it might not be for everyone, so some of you might do an alternate one for what's coming up. So I'm gonna show you to get into pigeon first. So you're gonna shift back. You got to get your bolster though. So you might have to take a few moments. If it's close enough that you can reach for it, you can move your blocks over to the side and then get your bolster and slide it under that left. So it's just a little bit back from the left knee. And your left foot is still going to be forward. So if you had to move around, get your bolster, come back. Have the lunge with the left foot forward. And then you're going to walk your left foot toe, heel, toes, heel to the right. And you're going to lean into that left thigh into pigeon pose. So take the movement in the torso forward. Okay. And you might find coming down to your elbows is fairly comfortable for you. But I'll show a variation for those that are not going to take this version. You're not going to have anything to do with it. Okay. So if you need a variation, here we go. So this is pigeon pose. If it's too much on this, but you want a little relief, but you can't quite get it, you can always put a ball under your left rear. It might seem a little silly, but it actually helps a lot for me on my knee. Even though the ball's under my knee, it's giving me more space at my knee. Okay, so you can put a ball there, or come around and have a seat with your left foot on top of a block. So this is your modification. So modification would be block forward, right knee out or right leg out like this with the ball under the knee, or right knee out with the ball under the knee, left foot onto the block and lean forward. No sand, right? I would go sandless on this one. So this is variation on pigeon pose. I would call this a hip juicer. This is a hip juicer. So the left foot is kind of passive, either version, pigeon or hip juicer. Hands could be on the upper thigh, inner leg, give it some direction. Come on, inner leg, right? Come on, groin stretch. Or hands could be back on the bolster. You know, they're both pretty good. If you have the ability to do either one and want to try them both, you can find what works better for your hip. Okay, but feeling where there's some kind of, there's a magnetizing quality right now in the hip, I think, on this one. So if you're in pigeon with left leg forward, you're here. Okay. If you're with the foot on the block, that's the next variation. Okay. So a few more breaths here. Blanket under elbows, block under elbows. So many props. It's nice to have choice. And the feeling where your back body reaches forward and down. Okay, so when you come around to the second side, those of you on just a simple Sukhasana, so sitting with your foot on the block, that's easy. You just switch the leg that's forward. If you're in the pigeon version, I think swinging around on the hip is best. So I just lean into my left hip and I bring the right leg forward And then I go around to my right hip and let the left leg stretch back. So if that ball variation was confusing to you, this is where it would go, right? You would just lift up a little bit and then push back to sit on it. You don't want the ball too far to the left and under. You want it a little bit towards the side so it just looks like it can barely stay, but you'll be able to hold on to it, right? The ball just kind of snuggles up into the pose. At least that's what the ball thinks it's supposed to do, right? So in this variation, the back foot can lift, the back foot could touch into the wall, or if you're not near the wall, just pressing the top of the foot to the ground.
Hello?
Did we lose Nicole?
I lost her.
I lost her.
I lost her.
There we are.
Back.
Let's see. You and I are back.
Nicole, you're gone.
I thought we were just doing a long story.
Oh, really?
I texted her. I said, we lost you.
Oh, okay. Thank you, boy.
She's probably still just doing class.
Yeah, she's going on and on.
There she is.
You're muted, Nicole.
Yay. Now we can.
Oh my gosh, that was so weird.
We lost you.
I know, that's so weird. Did
Okay.
you all stay together?
Yeah, we could talk to each other.
Oh, how weird. Okay, let's go back up. We're not going to record this part. That was the first time that ever happened to us after all these years.
I'm muting myself.
5 years. It was like I was trying to connect to Zoom, and then I was like, I'll just see if we can get back in. Okay. All right, we ready? Okay, let's go. I'm gonna mute everybody. You're muted. Okay. Okay, so come on up to, you got out of pigeon, or were you all in pigeon forever? That was the weirdest thing. Oh, I can't wait to see what Zoom sends me a message about later. All right, so is Mimi still here? I guess you all just stayed in, except Mimi maybe's gone. Okay. All right, so take a seat on your bolster. I want you to be next to the wall. So you're gonna be right up against it. Okay. Now, not right up against it. You need your bolster so you can touch the wall. Now, this is not one where I want you to be able to push the heel of your hand into the wall. I want you to be able to just use your fingers, so that wide stance of your fingers. Blocks might be important, but I think what's really going to be needed is the ball and the sandbag. So your left leg extends out. You can put a ball under your left knee. I know some of you are not interested in the ball under the knee thing. So you're going to be kind of a little more classic practitioner, likes to use just a block. So but nothing under the knee is okay, but I'm going to put a ball under my left knee. I have a sandbag on the top of the right thigh. And then as you turn to the right, you're going to have your block or no block under the right thigh and twist to the right, bring your right hand back to the wall. Okay, don't overdo it. I know sometimes I'll get a message that, oh, I did that twist and my shoulder hurt for so long. And so what might be helpful is that when you reach back to the wall, really spread out the fingers, okay? Unless it hurts like too much, right? You're gonna find moving the hand, so you're doing what's called an arm clock. Some people call it shoulder, some people call it arm clock. But when you turn, I'm trying to turn my fingers to the right and the left hand to the right leg. It doesn't have to be holding the kneecap, it could be just above the knee, but stretch the chest. It's everything, right? It's hip, a little bit of hip, but it's mostly ribs, sternum, chest motion, feeling and rotating. And just take a little bit of time, kind of spiraling up the really that spinal staircase is what we're doing up the spine. Okay, right hand reaches to the right lower side of the waist. Like if you were just gonna hold the side of your waist with your hand, so the thumb might be back towards kind of the kidney area. And then you're going to reach your left arm down to that left leg. Now, we may usually use a belt on this or have a block besides the leg, but see if you can just reach down to your leg. Doesn't have to be any props, but stretch that right side of the torso. Okay, take just another breath here. You're going to be working through the torso. Come back to the right, bring the right hand back to the wall. Take a turn, one more at a time. And then come back to the front, turn forward, and move any block you have under the right knee. And I want you to cross the left leg over the right leg, and then take a twist to the left. So right arm to the left leg, left hand back to the wall. This is a super twist. So if you're finding that you're not a super twister today, do the best that you can. And that might be this. It might be if your foot doesn't cross to the other side of the right leg, you might find it's better for you to have your left foot on a block and then just hold the left leg with the arm and stretch the left hand back. Okay, but these are really helpful, right, for our spine care. Just that turn to the wall is what we're going with, is that rotation. Ribs expand. Okay, now come back to center. Okay, now let's take that right leg to stretch out. Fall under the knee if you like. Sand over to the left thigh, the top. Okay, block under the left knee maybe. And we're gonna go first things on this one. I want you to take a moment where you maybe bring the hands to the lower part of the waist and you're gonna lean forward, flexing through that right foot. Okay, so kind of feel how the back has that sense of reaching, even though it's your chest that's reaching down, right? The back is motioning. And then as you come on up, right hand to the left knee, take that left hand back to the wall. And remember, spider the hand so fingers stretch open. And then you can feel a little bit of that counter spin in the chest. Okay, we'll be following up big time with getting this motion in our hip and our chest coming up next. So feel that turn in the ribs, breathing. Okay, now left hand to the left side of the back. Right arm reaches down to the right leg. And then just let that left arm start to work its way maybe up over the left side of the face. For some of us, we might want that. For some, we'll have our hand on the side of the waist and lean in. So breathing. And just feeling how the waist reaches, how the spine moves into the arch. And come back on up. Carefully feel the weight in the sitting bones. Right hand to left knee. Lift the heart, bring the left hand back to the wall one more time. And feel that rotation. You want to find a way to preserve your ability to rotate on the breath. So in breath, out breath, twist. Okay, now, just kind of visualize you got the left turn going, but the right side of the body is helping you create that rotation because it's the right arm, that leverage of moving to the left. Now come back center and then cross the right leg over the left. I still have my sandbag on the left inner thigh. I just move the ball and block away. And then I connect my left elbow to the right thigh. Try to keep that inner lift in the spine, the torso, and the right hand back to the wall, and then find that full seated spinal twist. Okay, the right hand could turn, but you could still do that shoulder clock movement. I adore using the wall for twists because I can definitely get my chest to lift. Right, I have to be kind of accountable in my breathing muscles and my abdominal muscles, my ribs. So good. Not easy, but so good for my inside work. Okay, take another couple breaths here. All right, now when we come around, I want you to just move that sand off the thigh and let's turn towards the wall, okay? And I want you to just push your bolster back. This is kind of fun. All right, so push, push, push. If I've got I'm gonna leave my blanket there, but I do want one under my head. So get a belt, okay? Push away so that your feet don't hit the wall. So when I lower back of the pelvis on the bolster, get a belt and take it into leg float. So feet to the belt, belt to the feet, push the feet out into a wide reach, like we do when we were in the standing pose, right? That was wide stance. This is leg float. That felt anything but a leg float. It was a leg push down. Okay, so have the feet in a wide extent. And you might find, oh, Mimi's there. Okay, good. Okay, so your feet are in that wide expanse, the back of the pelvis. All right, we're not recording, Mimi. That has not happened in this group in all these years, but oh well. Oh, it's all on the day you come to class. All right, so feet have that pressure. Now, if I pull, I have my elbows kind of dangling. I like that variation, just the dangling elbow. But you might let your elbows touch the floor. That might be better for some people. On the wrist, it is a nice little stretch for my wrist. I have to admit, I like that. But we're all different with how that responds in our bones. So with the feet pushing out, give it a few more moments. If you're one that loves to do this but not hold on to the belt, then don't, right? You can get busy with connecting, buckle up. Now she said something right halfway through the pose, and you can just let the legs float. This is a true leg float. Just buckle up and just be. So reversing the effects of gravity, not just on the musculature of my legs, just the circulation back to the heart, the brain is the benefit I get in this one. But there's no weight on my feet, not yet. Pretty soon we'll have weight there. But right now, no weight on the feet. But the feet have to wait, right? So the circulation can flow towards the heart and the brain. Take a few moments and just feel that sensation towards the upper body, to the chest, to the heart, to the face. Okay, now bending the legs. Reach up to the belts. If you're already holding it, slide the feet to each other. Okay, and let the left leg lower down and take a few moments here. Just cross that right leg over to the left, stretching through the side layer. We're going to do our little finale here, our final spinal, working across the connectivity of our back into our pelvis, our hip, our leg. And bend through the right knee and bring the leg back up. Of course, where else will it go? Left foot sneaks into the belt, right leg relaxes, and left leg crosses over to the right. So feeling that crossover, that reach through the hip. Yeah, balance the energy in the torso. One side to the next, you might have some different sensations, right? There's different organs on each side. So that could come around to sensation shifting, not just in the muscles. Now bend through that left knee and we'll keep going into this leg crossover. So take the belt off and see where your sand might be. I want you to get that close by in the next few moments, and the ball might be useful too. But first things first, I'll bring the knees to the chest. I'll scoot the bolster down and take a reach with the ball under the pelvis. So ball is at my sacrum. I'm going to move my hips side to side. We're going to do a nice little finale for the hip. So if you have things on the side yard on the right side, you might leave them. You might actually like to have the additional height. You'll find out. Okay. Now get a little movement. So when my foot pushes, I'm actually pushing off my foot as I glide across the back of the pelvis. So it's a little different than we had in the beginning with our feet on the floor. If I have something up under my feet, I can get a little bit more play into the glutes. If you haven't noticed that, it is kind of interesting. Kind of side to side. Okay, now you're going to move your hips up on the bridge pose. You're going to take your bolster. If you don't do hip crossover with your bolster on the side yard, there's a few of you I know that like to do this variation without the bolster on the side, so then you could go into that. But those of us that have a bolster on the side, you can place it across. If you've got happen to have other props over there, they may actually be welcome. So my left leg lifts and crosses over to the bolster on the right side now, ball to the sacrum, and then sandbag on the outer left thigh. Okay, so feel where that support is on the hip, where the left arm opens, where the right leg bends, and then your head can roll to the left. Okay, and feeling what connects here with the spaciousness in chest and hip. Take some moments here to stretch fully into all the upper, middle, and lower branches of the extremities. Okay, now moving the sand off the hip, moving the ball from that left side, and then as you get ready to switch sides, you might put the ball at your sacrum and give a little bit of massage there. You might decide, I'm just going to move my bolster, or if your feet are on the bolster, you're going to cross the right leg over the left. So some of us have our feet here, and then we cross the leg over, and the rest of us will swing our leg over to the left side on the bolster. Okay, so we've got a ball, sacrum. It's just an anchor. It's not especially exciting, but it is a nice little support for moving your hip across. Sand on the outer right thigh, and as your arm is open, you want to kind of get this center track of the body ready for our final inversion next. So get this mid body rotating, twisting, all the energy that works into the pelvis, the core organs, the corgans. Shoulder on that right side centers down. Breathe. It only helps. Okay, now moving the sand down towards the wall. You can't push it that far with the weight of it, but kind of shove it towards the wall. And then moving the ball aside, rolling to the left or the right, whatever direction you want to go. And add your bolster next to the wall. Now, if going to legs up is a little tricky for you with the bolster, you can always use just a blanket. You can stack one or two, so you still get that inversion effect. You want to have the energetics of reversing the flow back towards the heart and brain. Okay, so it's basically any height you get to choose. And if you have a round bolster, you might try that. There are some schools where legs up the wall is round bolster only. And it is nice because it creates that strong arch in the spine. So it kind of keeps that wisdom in your back long after the pose. So if you want to have more height on your flat bolster, if you don't have a round one, you can always add a blanket on top. Okay. But I'm going to go just kind of simple old school, got a flat bolster, standard size. I got my pelvis on the bolster, I swing the legs up, and then I bring my sand to my feet and lift up. My hips are not, I'm not entirely up to the wall right now with my rear and my legs, but I'm content because I can feel the arch on my back. So it may not look like the most impressive legs up, but it feels good. So you decide, and some of you might really like to feel a deeper arch, like you're going to push your rear closer. So play with that and then see if you can find some acceptance in how well you've done to get there. It's a long process. And now we get to receive the benefits from this whole practice, right? So in the inversion, letting your head rest back, feeling the expansiveness of the chest, the shoulders back. The legs might feel like they're particularly close, but if you sense the back line of the body, there's a nice feeling of length into the tailbone. And instead of scanning all the different particulars of being in a body, just let your breath relax. Just receive the practice. Relax the throat, the face. Feel the touch of the back on the ground and the openness of the chest. So we're just feeling that kind of massive tune-up that occurs from going into an inversion, just internally giving yourself a few more moments to refresh the legs, the feet before they're stepped on again, refresh the heart and the lungs. And more importantly, right, what's at the very top, perhaps, right, the computer at the top, the brain. Just let it exist, just like the organs, kind of feeling the support from inversion. Same thing here with the brain, just not on the top of it all. And then float the feet away from the wall and just bend through the legs. Take your time. If you feel safe enough to drop the sand overhead, as long as it doesn't drop on your hands or your glasses, that's okay. But with some care and consideration, just move the sand however you like. It's kind of cathartic to drop it overhead, I think, but it can also be a little surprising. Hug the legs in, find comfort in the knees, just feeling that latch of the arms to the back of the leg, to the back of the knee. Kind of feeling that branch of the legs connecting. And then rock a little bit side to side, just small little pulses on the bolster or the blanket that's under your pelvis. And roll to the side and let your head come up last. Try to use your hands to help you press. And then scoot yourself on the bolster. And then as you come up, spine tall, spine arched. Bring the hands to join together, maybe feeling the finger pads, and then feeling the heel of the hand at that final expression. So take a deep breath in, uniting our focus, breathing in wellness, and then with exhalation, heels of the hands press and bowing into the space behind your heart.